What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there's tons of news to go over here this week. There's a lot more than even usual, so I apologize if this video is a little bit extra long, but lots of exciting new debuts this week to cover. So first, Porsche has revealed the all-new 911 GT3. So this is the 2022 992 version, and so it's very impressive. So it has a very distinct look with a more rounded front bumper there. It's more aggressive, and that's also more adjustable as well, with 4 settings for both the front spoiler and the front diffuser. There's also air vents in the carbon fiber hood, a race-inspired carbon fiber rear wing, which also has 4 settings of its own. There's also various other exterior changes like lighter forged wheels than before and even lighter glass. So all these weight savings do help the new GT3 here to maintain the same weight as before as the old one. So it's around 3,100 pounds. And then the most glorious thing about it is that it actually retains the same wonderful engine as it had, just an improved version of it here. So that is one thing that they continue to go with, the naturally aspirated 4-liter flat-six engine. That's essentially the same engine from the Speedster, just with different pistons that makes it basically almost the same as a GT3 Cup race car version of the GT3. But in this street-legal GT3, it does 502 horsepower and 346 pound-feet of torque, which is only 8 less horsepower than that racing version. So they're really not kidding here. It still revs to 9,000 RPMs, thankfully, and thankfully it also continues to offer a choice of either a 6-speed manual or the 7-speed PDK. The PDK shifter is unique here to the GT3 and allows for manual shifts as well, so it's a little bit of an actual shifter instead of the little tiny thing you have here in the new 911s. So that's a nice change here for the GT3. Also, the PDK version is of course going to be the quickest, so it does a 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. But of course it'll be slower for the manual. Top speed is 197 miles per hour. Suspension wise, the front track is 1.9 inches wider for the GT3, and it gets a double wishbone suspension similar to the one on the 911 RSR race car. So another race car here, but it has some similar stuff to that. In the back, it also gets a totally unique multi-link rear suspension that doesn't have one part in common with the regular 911, they say. So totally new underneath here. The brakes are more stout as well, being 1 inch bigger up front, with carbon ceramics being an extra option you can add on as well. It goes without saying that all these improvements make it better in every way, and its Nürburgring time is about 17 seconds faster than before, now doing a lap in 6 minutes and 59.927 seconds, right under 7 minutes there. But anyway, it's going to be on sale this fall, and they don't have any pricing for it yet, but seems like a glorious car. I'd love to drive one someday. Even the 997 GT3 that I reviewed about a year and a half ago was amazing, and so I can only imagine these new versions must be pretty special. So interesting to see that. McLaren this week has also revealed a pretty big new car for them. So this is the Artura. And so even though the styling and proportions seem familiar, it's totally new with McLaren's new lightweight carbon architecture, a new engine, suspension, chassis, all that is new. The look is evolutionary, but it looks good with lots of little improvements like vertical doors that now open closer to the car, making it easier to open in tighter spaces. The new engine is a twin-turbo 3-liter V6 that they say doesn't share any components with the old V8. So this isn't just like the old V8 with 2 cylinders hacked off. It's completely different. They say it's a 120-degree angle setup with the turbos inside of the V. And the packaging makes the motor very compact, and it's actually about 110 pounds lighter than the old V8 setup. It does 577 horsepower and 471 pound-feet of torque on its own, but the Artura is a plug-in hybrid. So with an electric motor that it has in here, it's capable of an extra 94 horsepower and 166 pound-feet of torque for a grand total of combined power of 671 horsepower and 531 pound-feet of torque. So that peak torque number there doesn't add up to the max of the 2 motors, and that's because they say that basically the electric motor makes its peak power at a different time than the gas engine does. So there is no point where they overlap to both have their same peaks. That's why the peak you see is a little bit lower there. Anyway, that electric motor only adds 34 pounds, and in performance scenarios, it's designed basically for torque infill, as McLaren calls it, which means it makes up for any turbo lag, and it also improves throttle response. And so it's also paired up with a 7.4 kilowatt hour battery, which is a decent sized battery for a vehicle like this. And so that actually allows the Artura to have 19 miles of all-electric range for completely silent driving. And when everything is working together, though, you'll get to 0 to 60 in 3 seconds flat with the Artura here. Still very, very fast. Has a 10.7 second quarter mile time, and its top speed is limited to 205 miles per hour. So I'm guessing you can go a little bit higher than that, but that's what they wanted to limit it at. And so anyway, another interesting thing about the Artura is this all runs through an interesting 8-speed dual-clutch transmission that's smaller than usual because it has no reverse gear. And so it instead relies on the electric motor to reverse the car. And that is something that Ferrari first did with the SF90 Stradale. So McLaren's not the first here, but it still is very interesting and a much cheaper vehicle to do it in than the very more expensive Ferrari there. But anyway, another thing is that there's a new gear that they added, but this is for the real limited slip differential. It's a mechanical limited slip diff that it has now. Instead of the open diff that they had in the past that just used software to fix it, this actually has a real mechanical LSD, which is great. And that's something that modern McLarens have never used. I think the last one was the McLaren F1 way back when. Also, by the way, in case you're wondering, it is rear-wheel drive only. There is no version with an extra electric motor in the front or anything like that, like the SF90. This is all 100% rear-wheel drive. It also only weighs 3,303 pounds, which makes it lighter than the P1 and all the other hybrid supercars out there, and should help it to have even better handling than past McLarens because they kept that curb weight nice and light. Suspension-wise, it gets a double wishbone front suspension and a new multi-link rear suspension design for better braking stability, they say. It runs regular springs and anti-roll bars with adaptive dampers instead of the more complicated weird setup that the 720S had where it didn't have any anti-roll bars and stuff. This isn't quite that unconventional. And one thing that is very conventional is the steering. They stuck around with the actual hydraulic power steering, which is really rare these days, but it does have hydraulic power steering, which is cool. So steering feel and all that should be really, really good. That's one thing I loved about the 570S and even the 720S is they just had such good steering feel. Oh, I love driving all the new McLarens. They were fantastic. Anyway, the interior is also a very nice upgrade here from past McLarens with ambient lighting now. There's a new 8-inch touchscreen infotainment system and new software along with an interesting crown dial there, similar to like a watch, which is interesting. We'll have to see how that works in practice. It also has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto now, and thankfully there also are no buttons on the steering wheel. So that is a stark contrast from what some other companies are, doing where everything's going onto the steering wheel. Thankfully, McLaren is keeping their steering wheel simple, and I think that's for the better. I think there's nothing wrong with having turn signal stalks and wiper stalks, and so I'm glad they're keeping all that stuff around. Now, it is going to be still pretty high-tech. This actually is going to be the first McLaren to have safety features like adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning, and road sign recognition. So it does have some of that stuff, but I'm sure you can turn all that stuff off if you don't want it. And it's also an option, by the way. You have to add on. It does not come standard or anything like that. And so ordering is going to be open now with prices starting at $225,000. And so that does make it a little bit more expensive than the 570S and actually makes it about 15 grand more expensive than the McLaren GT, which is now the new entry-level model for McLaren. And the Artura will now be a little bit above that. And so the 570S is completely gone. This replaces it for sure. But this is even a little bit of a higher rung up than that, again, now that it's in a little bit higher, have a higher positioning within the lineup and stuff. So very impressive there. And yeah, they're going to be starting to arrive in the third quarter of 2021. So very impressive there from McLaren. And for some slightly less exciting news, Chevy has revealed the 2022 Bolt and Bolt EUV. But there is a really exciting component about these vehicles, so stick with me here. So first, as far as mechanicals go, it's unchanged from the current Bolt, meaning you still get a 200 horsepower, 266 pound-feet of torque, front motor, and that's it. There is no all-wheel drive, even though they're claiming the EUV is a crossover. No all-wheel drive available or anything. Still runs the same 65 kilowatt-hour battery that still does 259 miles of range on the regular Bolt. So no extra range, nothing. And in the EUV, it actually goes down 9 miles because of the, it's a slightly larger vehicle. So that has only 250 miles of electric range. But that EUV version is a totally unique body that is 6.3 inches longer than a regular Bolt, and it's on a wheelbase that's almost 3 inches longer. But it seems like most of that length has gone to the rear seat room, which is larger than before. But the EUV supposedly has basically no more cargo space than the regular Bolt, so there's no real gains there. It's only 0.2 inches taller as well, so it doesn't have any more ground clearance. Again, it's only front-wheel drive, so it's not like it's actually trying to be an SUV, honestly. It's mostly just about giving people that look. look that they're going for, and that's about it. Aside from those obvious styling changes, though, on the outside, they also get some nice changes on the inside here. There's a bunch of components that are the same between the two models, but the EUV does have some slightly nicer features available with it. But they all get the same standard 10.2-inch touchscreen as before, but it now runs regular Chevy infotainment software, so it's easier to use than the quirkier menus they had in the Bolts in the past. Also, now wireless charging is standard, and smartphone integration is also standard, but it seems like wireless smartphone integration is an extra option still, so to have that wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, I don't know if that's standard. I think that sounds like it's an option. But anyway, in that area, they also ditched the traditional shifter for a push-button setup and reconfigured that whole area as well to open up some more space, they say. Chevy has also improved the seats and the interior materials, and the steering wheel and the HVAC controls are also restyled, so everything's really been gone over here. And there's also new regen paddles on the steering wheel, so you can play around with the regen now, and there's also a button for one-pedal driving, which was previously kind of unavailable, at least with just a push of a button, so that's nice to have. And probably the biggest addition here, though, to the Bolt is that it has Super Cruise. So you can now get Super Cruise. This is the first non-Cadillac to get Super Cruise here. We also know that the Hummer EV is getting it, but that's coming after this and stuff. So this will technically be the first non-Cadillac. And that's a pretty big deal, because honestly, if you do lots of highway commuting, but less than 250 miles a day, since that'll be your limit, it kind of would make sense to just buy this just for the Super Cruise, because it's the cheapest way to get into Super Cruise, and it's going to, be really nice to commute in, because Super Cruise is fantastic. If you watched my Escalade review from a couple of weeks ago, it is really amazing, and if I was doing a lot of highway driving, I would certainly consider getting one of these. I think it's really that nice. It's going to be actually about $5,000 cheaper for this new Bolt over the old one. It's going to be starting at $31,995, including destination for the regular one, and it's only $2,000 more for that EUV version. So I'm sure the EUV is going to outsell the regular Bolt by a good bit, just because for only $2,000 more, it's you get a lot more space, and it probably makes a lot of sense for people. If you do want an EUV with a Super Cruise, which by the way, that's the only way you get Super Cruise is in the EUV version, the regular Bolt, you can't get it, which is kind of a bummer, because if you don't need that crossover look and the extra space, why not have it in there? But anyway, it's only in the EUV, and you have to step up to a premier trim of the EUV to get it, which starts at $38,500. And then you have to add on the option for it, because it's only available in the Premier trim. So you'll likely be at least around $40,000. It's a $2,500 option in the Escalade. Not sure if they'll make it a little bit of a cheaper option here since it's a Chevy, but you'll be around $40,000 most likely for a Super Cruise Bolt EUV. But still a whole lot cheaper than any other way to get into the, even if you get a used CT6 with the first gen of Super Cruise, you're going to be paying more than $40,000. So either way, you come out ahead here with this. Unfortunately, you don't get the $7,500 tax credit, because Chevy exhausted that a while back. But Chevy is trying to sweeten the deal a little bit by offering to cover the cost of installing a level 2 charger at your house. If you're new to EVs and you don't have a charger yet, they will cover that cost, which is a little bit of an extra compelling thing, because it's not cheap to install a level 2 charger. And so to have that for free here from Chevy is really cool as well. And so anyway, they're going to be arriving this summer, so very interesting to see that. Hyundai this week has revealed the details here for the US version of the refreshed 2022 Kona. So I already covered these styling changes to the Kona. It was actually revealed way back in September of 2020. And here we are in February of 2021, and they're finally giving us details on the US version. A very delayed rollout. But anyway, I'm going to skip over all that styling stuff and just talk about the powertrain here, because it is a little bit unique here for our market. So the Limited and the new N-Line versions will get a 20 horsepower bump from that 1.6 liter turbo motor to now do 195 horsepower, and also still continues with the 195 pound-feet of torque they had before. So nice little bump there, although it's weird that both the Limited and the N-Line get it. So the N-Line isn't really any sportier. It just has the sportier looks, but there's no suspension upgrades for the N-Line or anything like that. It's just about the look and getting the same powerful engine you get in the Limited. So nothing impressive there. We will be waiting, though. We do know a full-blown Kona N is coming. It's been teased many times. That will be the real performance version. But it would have been nice to at least have a little bit of a suspension upgrade on the N-Line, but anyway, I digress. And so other things here, the base model continues with the carryover powertrain, so that will be the same as before, same engine, same CVT transmission there. They did say, though, as far as suspension and chassis stuff goes, that they, on all Konas, they've improved the ride for better stability and ride comfort. So they will be getting some improvements there. Just again, nothing sportier. And they also say the Konas should be quieter now because there's going to be new acoustic glass and more sound insulation as well. So that should all help. And there's no pricing still, even here, like, 6 months after they revealed it. But anyway, they'll be arriving this spring finally here in the States. So interesting to see that. And in some other Hyundai news here, very briefly, they've confirmed that they will indeed be sending us the plug-in hybrid version of the refreshed Santa Fe here that's coming. They already told us we were going to be getting the regular hybrid and the regular Santa Fe, but now we will be getting the plug-in hybrid version the rest of the world gets, which is a good thing because, in the past it's been like all those electrified versions were only for Europe. So the fact that we're getting it here in the States is, exciting. So it is going to be the same setup as the Tucson uses for the plug-in hybrid. So it's going to be the 1.6 liter turbo engine combined with a 6-speed automatic, and then is combined with an electric motor on top of that, and a 13 kilowatt hour battery. So it gives you a total of 260 horsepower and 30 miles of all electric range according to their estimates. That's not EPA verified yet, but that's what they're estimating here for the States is 30 miles. So that would be pretty good. Still is, a solid, 10 or 12 miles under the RAV4 Prime, but still could be a nice, compromise for someone who's not able to get their hands on a RAV4 Prime because those things are still super rare and hard to find, unfortunately. So you get one of these instead and, still have a good amount of electric range here. They also estimate that it's going to get 33 miles per gallon just in mixed, driving if you're not doing the EV stuff. And the regular hybrid will be getting a 34 mpg, they're estimating as well. So both should do very, very good there. The regular hybrid is going to be arriving this spring, and the plug-in hybrid is going to be coming this summer, starting around $35,000. It'll be available in like a higher SEL trim and then a limited trim for that. So you will already be starting pretty high up with trim stuff with the plug-in hybrids, and then if you want the fully loaded version, you'll probably be somewhere in the 40s there. But again, a RAV4 Prime, those max out at almost 50 grand. So this could actually undercut that and give you a little bit more space as well. So pretty interesting to hear that. Mitsubishi this week has revealed the all-new 2022 Outlander, and this is the first all-new Outlander, I think, since like 2012, they said, or something, so it's been a while. It's a pretty big deal. And so this is a big deal for a lot of reasons. This is also the first model to use Nissan components since their partnership with Nissan several years ago, and it's a lot more part sharing than I expected, honestly. I was really shocked when I saw the interior. So first, as far as the looks go, they're totally unique and very bold. I personally think it looks great. It looks almost identical to the concept car version, and that's really rare for companies to do. So I really have to commend Mitsubishi. I think that the fact that they actually made the concept come to life and it looks as good as it does, I think is actually a pretty impressive thing. So I congratulate them for that. As far as the dimensions and stuff go, here it's 0.6 inches longer than before on a 1.4 inch longer wheelbase, along with being 2 inches wider and 1.5 inches taller. So definitely bigger, but it's not maybe as huge as it looks in pictures. But those bigger dimensions provide an extra inch of legroom, they say, for both the front and the back passengers. And the back seats do slide as well to provide more or less space for the tiny third row that is standard in the Outlander. And aside from this vehicle and the Volkswagen Tiguan, those are the only two that provide you with a third row. And in the Tiguan, it's only in certain trims, whereas the Outlander here, they all get it. So that is the one unique thing about the Outlander, is there's no other compact SUVs that give it to you across the board like the Outlander does. But anyway, otherwise, the interior is basically all the same as a Nissan Rogue, like nearly identical. I mean, it is... I'm kind of shocked, honestly, at just how much Nissan let them take. If I was a Nissan design engineer or something, I would actually be a little bit insulted that Mitsubishi got to copy all of my homework, because that's basically what they did here. So steering wheel, gauges, infotainment, climate controls, the shifter, switchgear, all that is identical to a Rogue, basically. I mean, they didn't even bother changing the font on the infotainment. It's the same font, just a tiny little change to the color of the graphics, but it is otherwise, the menus are identical. Everything is the same. It's kind of crazy. This is the closest badge engineering thing I've seen in a while. So anyway, there is some nicer stuff. You give the nice stitching pattern on the seats that's slightly different depending on the trim compared to what you get in the Rogue. And yeah, that's about it. But I mean, it does look very nice. I mean, I'm not complaining. I think this is excellent for Mitsubishi, as long as Nissan doesn't mind it. I mean, clearly they signed off on it, but which is kind of crazy. But I think it's going to be a huge improvement, because I think the Nissan Rogue is probably arguably the best in-class interior in the compact SUV segment. So the fact that Mitsubishi is getting this basically puts them at almost a best-in-class interior which is something they sorely, I think, needed here with the Outlander, and will be a huge perk here for the Outlander as well. So, I mean, I can't blame Mitsubishi for wanting to use all this stuff. Like I said, it's just surprising. It also provides Mitsubishi with a ton of huge improvements that they've never had before. So this is the first one that now has digital gauges. You get a head-up display as an option, 3-zone climate control, wireless Apple CarPlay, Bose stereo, panoramic roof, all that kind of stuff. But interestingly, which goes to show just how close this is to the Rogue, you can't get cooled seats. Just like in the Rogue, there's no way to get cooled seats. That's an omission I complained about in the Rogue, because basically all the other competitors do offer it, or many of them do, and you don't get it in the Rogue, you don't get it here in the Outlander either. One unique thing though about the interior is that the chimes and alerts were developed by Bandai Namco, which means that it should have some video game vibes to the sounds on the inside of the vehicle as well, which is a fun little quirk. Mechanically, it also shares most of its parts with the new Rogue, meaning the V6 is gone and it's replaced with a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, doing the same exact 181 horsepower and 181 pound-feet of torque, and running through the same exact CVT transmission as the Nissan Rogue. But I know everyone loves to hate on Nissan CVT reliability, and if you're worried about the reliability of a Nissan CVT, you should talk with Mitsubishi, because they're putting their full 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty on the Outlander here. So if you're wanting a Rogue, but you're worried about, the warranty coverage, you want to keep a vehicle for longer than the 5 years or so for the Rogue warranty, go for the Mitsubishi here, and then you'll have 100,000 miles of coverage here. So whatever happens, but at least it's under warranty. But I think, hopefully this is a newer design for the CVT. Hopefully it's been retuned to be more durable and reliable and stuff. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. And there's no details yet on the plug-in hybrid version, which they did say is coming, but they didn't say when. It's just coming later. So in the meantime, the old Outlander plug-in hybrid will continue on. If you do prefer that older version, you can just go for that one instead. But front-wheel drive is going to be standard. But one other big unique thing about the mechanical components with the Mitsubishi here is that they're using their own rally-derived super all-wheel control all-wheel drive system with 6 different drive modes that it has. They really tuned it for better off-road handling and, anytime you're on loose gravel and stuff. And I mean, Mitsubishi, to have to give them credit, they know how to do an all-wheel drive system. The Evo's all-wheel drive system was legendary. And all that stuff they've learned from the Evo, here many years later, is kind of, spreading out to the Outlander and stuff as well. So that's good news. And so potentially this could be better than the Rogue. If it has a more advanced all-wheel drive system and stuff, that could put it over the top as well, in addition to that longer warranty. And tuning for the suspension, the powertrain, and the driver aids is also different for the Mitsubishi. So those will be a little bit different with their, maybe their character. Speaking of driving aids, though, that's also another thing that Mitsubishi took from Nissan. So it gets Nissan's fantastic Pro Pilot Assist system, which Mitsubishi has rebranded as Mi Pilot Assist instead. But that's the adaptive cruise control system with the steering assist. And when I tested it in the Rogue, it was one of the best systems out there. It's right up there, in my opinion, with Honda and Volvo as some of the best with that steering assist and stuff. So that is fantastic. And that'll be another huge perk for the Mitsubishi that it sorely needs. So that'll be great. And so these 2022 Outlanders will be going on sale in April. I think it's early April. And they're going to be starting at $26,990, which is only $245 more than a Rogue. And now that is for a front-wheel drive version. So all-wheel drive, I'm not sure, if it'll be the same kind of upcharge that Nissan does or not, since it's a different all-wheel drive system. But so, I mean, that is a little bit more expensive than, the Rogue. But I mean, you get the extra third row in the Outlander, so that kind of makes up for the price hike there. But it is also on the higher end of the spectrum as far as starting prices for compact crossovers. It's higher than the starting price of the CRV, stuff like that. So yes, you get the third row, and you get a best-in-class interior and a best-in-class warranty. We'll see if those things really help it out. The new Tucson is coming as well, though, which does have the same 10-year warranty on it. So that will be the only one that kind of competes with that, but that does not have a third row. So it's all very compelling, and I think they have a very strong package here. I think it looks great, and I wish them all the best, because Mitsubishi badly needs a hit and needs something that's going to, be really, really competitive, and so hopefully this does it for them. So interesting to see that. Speaking of Nissan, though, they revealed the Qashqai, the next generation version here, which is called the Rogue Sport here in the US, and is the second gen version of the Rogue Sport that we'll be getting, that most likely will be identical to this. And so it looks really sharp in the front there. The side profile is also pretty cool with a floating roof kind of look. But the taillights look identical to a Toyota Highlander. I don't know if it's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments. But like, direct copy of Highlander taillights. Otherwise, though, it looks pretty good. It's a little bit bigger in every way, and even the wheelbase was lengthened by just under an inch. So it is, a tiny bit larger, but not by much. And despite being bigger, it's actually a little bit lighter now, thanks to using more aluminum for much of the body. The interior benefits from many of the same components as the Rogue, with the top trims even getting the new digital gauges and that 9-inch screen, just like the Mitsubishi and stuff. You can even get massaging seats, though, here in the Qashqai, which is pretty impressive. And even the Rogue doesn't get massaging seats, I don't think. So that's a pretty sweet touch there. It also gets the Pro Pilot Assist system as well. And so all those things should really make this, one of the best in this segment, and, very, very competitive. And so if Mitsubishi continues with their extensive part sharing, I would expect this interior to show up identically in the next generation Outlander Sport whenever that comes down the road here. But edges for the Qashqai here are going to be different in the UK than they will be here for the Rogue Sport in the States. So I won't bother going through all of them. There's like 3 different ones. I'm guessing here in the States we'll get a carryover engine most likely, but maybe they'll do something different. We'll have to wait and see. We don't have any more info as far as when we'll see our Rogue Sport here, but it should show up sometime, for the 2022 model year. So anytime this year, I'm sure we'll probably see it debut for us. Honda this week has revealed their subcompact crossover for the UK. This is the next generation HRV, which in Japan they call the Vizelle. And so Honda has noted previously that we'll get a different HRV designed for specifically North America. That's coming later. What that looks like, I'm not sure. It probably, I'm guessing, will look a good bit like this still, but we'll have to wait and see. Especially the interior, I expect to carry over pretty closely to this. Now, it looks pretty good, and especially the front there, I'm not in love with those body-colored grille slats. That's the only thing that's a little off-putting to me. Otherwise, though, I think it looks pretty good, although it does also remind me of a new Toyota Mirai a little bit. But anyway, I think it looks pretty good, especially I love the back end. I think it's fantastic with the way they have the lighting connecting right at the Honda badge there. But the interior looks really nice, too. There's improved materials, it looks like, a larger 9-inch screen, a panoramic roof even, and more back seat space. And there's no specific dimensions that they mentioned yet, this. We can't, kind of dig into that at all or anything as far as how much bigger this version is, but it's kind of irrelevant if we're getting a different version anyway. The other big news here is that at least this global model is going to be hybrid only, but it's a setup from the Fit, which we don't get here in the States anymore either, so it's unlikely to come over here. The more likely setup that everyone's thinking is it'll probably get, if it does go with a hybrid setup, it'll probably be the setup from the Insight, which is a 1.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder with an electric motor, and something like that. I think it has close to 200 horsepower all combined, or at least close to 200 pound-feet of torque. I think it's like 151 horsepower. So something like that, which would totally fit with the HRV's kind of segment and stuff to have 150 horsepower. So that should be good if they end up doing that. But we'll have to wait and see. For this UK version, it is both front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, depending on which option you pick, and they'll be going on sale in April. So hopefully the North American version, comes relatively soon as well, because the HRV is definitely one of the older ones in this segment and definitely needs a new redo pretty quickly. So hopefully they bring that soon. Kia this week has revealed a few pictures, just a few, of the new K8 that will be selling in other parts of the world. But since the Cadenza and the K900 were both just recently discontinued because of their very few sales, there's basically no chance this will come to the States. It looks really cool, but yeah, so I'm not going to dwell on that because we probably won't get it. So, but interesting to see that. Maserati has also this week teased the 2022 Grecale SUV that's coming this year. It's going to be smaller and compete with the Porsche Macan. And based on these official spy pictures, it appears to be taking some design inspiration from that new MC20 supercar that Maserati revealed last year. And so that should make for some pretty interesting styling. Mechanically, it's rumored to be using a modified version of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio platform, which sounds very promising. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops here and hopefully see it before the end of this year. Jaguar and Land Rover this week had some very big news and some very interesting news. It kind of makes me concerned. So Jaguar announced that they will only be selling electric cars by 2030, with all the cars that are being built on this new electric platform that they're going to be starting off with here in the next few years. And they say the platform will even be different from Land Rover's platform, because they're going to get their own platform at Land Rover. And they say this will give 2 clear, unique personalities. So that's a lot of money to invest in 2 separate platforms just for a personality. So They're serious about it, their investments here in their electric cars, but it's kind of bizarre with some of the other stuff they did. So Land Rover is going to be slower with their rollout, saying they're only going to launch 6 fully electric vehicles in the next 5 years. But only 60% of their sales will be electric by 2030. So they're doing 60%. Jaguar is going 100% in 2030. But both of them are going to be rolling out some new stuff here, in the next few years. But Land Rover will definitely be the slower of the two. And Automotive News is actually reporting that Land Rover could keep gas engines around as long as until the end of the 2030s. So we're talking almost 20 years away here before the gas engines go away for Land Rover. So still plenty of time for them. But the other surprising piece of Jaguar news here is that their all-electric XJ sedan, big grand sedan that's been spy testing dozens of times in the past few years, that was basically, it seemed to be almost production ready, that has been completely canceled. So they just announced we're going fully electric, but their newest electric vehicle is canceled, and they're just throwing it in the garbage bin and starting over, which makes no sense for multiple reasons. So this is very, very confusing. Autoblog was just as confused as I was, so they asked the Jaguar spokesperson about it, and they told them the reason is that they have moved on to a different approach for the entire Jaguar EV lineup vision based around a new, unique Jaguar EV dedicated platform, all due in 2025. So, it just still seems bizarre to say, hey, we're going fully electric, and in the same exact press release say, and we've killed our new electric car. And then to say, okay, if this were a massive company with tons of money and stuff, okay, sure, you want to be picky and you want to scrap your car you're almost done working on, okay, fine. It would be bizarre for anyone to do. But then for Jaguar and Land Rover that are struggling, that, are not near, they are far from the top of the food chain here. They cannot afford to waste money. And so to spend years developing a car and millions of dollars developing a car and then have it go nowhere and literally throw it in the garbage and it never see the light of day. I don't understand that. Even if it was just an I-Pace with a new body on it and the range was terrible and the efficiency was terrible and everything was bad, even if it was an XJ that only could go 150 miles on a charge, still at least put it out there. You worked all these years on it, sell it. Even though if you only sell 5 of them, it's still worth putting out there and at least getting some money from it. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't make any sense to Jaguar for some reason. But their accountants must be just fuming, to spend all this money and then have it pay off with nothing. That's just kind of, I can't remember the last time I've ever seen a car this far along with it being, you would think it would be the perfect car. But anyway, I'm going to just move on from that because I don't think we're ever going to be able to wrap our heads around that whole decision. But anyway, for some more backwards thinking along the same line, Automotive News is also reporting that Jaguar will be moving away from SUVs and back to sedans to allow Land Rover to have all the SUVs. Now, that is not a confirmed thing, so we'll just go ahead and chalk that up as a rumor. But considering all the other head-scratching stuff going on at Jaguar, this doesn't surprise me if that is the case. And again, the F-Pace is the best thing Jaguar has done in the past few years as far as sales goes. They need sales. That's why they went with the SUVs and, quit doing, and they kind of scaled back on the sedans and stuff. This is not how you keep a company alive. You don't kill off their most profitable models and then, kill off the super expensive high-tech, newfangled thing that they're developing and, completely dump all that money down the drain. I honestly, after hearing this news, I don't know if Jaguar is going to make it till 2030. I hope they do. I hope they thrive. Maybe Land Rover will continue to kill it and subsidize Jaguar for the next, 50 years or something. I have no clue, but if Jaguar was left to survive on their own, this would kill them, I think. It makes no sense to me. I wish the best for Jaguar. I love them as a brand. I hope to own an F-Type one day before Jaguar goes away. But I don't get that at all. That was the most bizarre thing I've seen all week, at least in the car world. Anyway, moving on to other news here. Ford this week announced that their passenger vehicles will be converted completely to electric by 2030 as well. So everything in Ford of Europe will be completely electric by 2030. So again, this is, basically on par with everything else. Jaguar just announced this. GM's doing the same thing. Many other companies are, committing to a similar type of thing. And so that's pretty crazy, but they're even going a little quicker than that with just some of the other electrified stuff. So first, their factory in Germany will be converted to build a new electric car for Europe that will be arriving by the middle of 2023 that will be based on Volkswagen's MEB electric architecture. So, a few years back, they had a partnership with Volkswagen, so Ford gets to use Volkswagen's electric stuff. I believe that will most likely stay in Europe. We won't get that car here in the States. I could be wrong. I don't think anyone knows just yet, but but that's for Europe. And they also, mostly that partnership was for commercial vehicles and stuff, so I don't think there'll be too many consumer vehicles with the Volkswagen stuff with a Ford badge on it, but we'll have to see on all that. But so that's interesting. But even before 2030, Ford is planning to get everything either be plug-in hybrid or fully electric by 2024. So 2024 is going to be when they're at least aiming to say, there's nothing in our lineup that is, it's either going to be plug-in hybrid or electric. There is not going to be any regular hybrids. There's not going to be any non-hybrids. That's it. Which means if you're in Europe and you want a Mustang, you better go get one here in the next 3 years or less. Get one while you can, because the Mustang doesn't have a plug-in hybrid or even a regular hybrid version, so there is no way they're going to sell the Mustang in Europe for much longer. The Mach-1 we know is coming this year, and after that, they might announce that it's just leaving altogether, and you'll be left with the Mach-E, and that's it. So that's kind of crazy, but again, that's the way everything's going these days. Unfortunately, I'm continuing to, there's more and more of these stories. I have to report on them. Mercedes this week has teased the next generation 2022 C-Class that they're debuting next week, and expect the styling to essentially be just a shrunken down E-Class, so nothing too revolutionary there. The wagon behind it in the teaser there is most likely just for Europe, so don't get too excited about seeing the wagon there. Mechanically though, all C-Class models, they say, will have some form of hybridization, ranging from either a 48 volt mild hybrid system all the way up to plug-in hybrid. So every new C-Class coming here, even in the States, will have at least the 48 volt system, which is, not really a real hybrid, but it's, extended stop start stuff. And, so that's going to be the most non-hybrid C-Class you'll be able to get here this year. So that'll be crazy to have exclusively hybrid C-Classes. And on top of that, Car and Driver just got confirmation this month from AMG that all AMG versions of the C-Class will also be hybrid, and that they are all going to only 4 cylinders. So this confirms the rumor we've heard for a while here that the new C63 will be a 4-cylinder turbo with electrification. The V8 is dead. Even the inline 6 in the C-Class is dead. Forget about all that stuff. The C43 will continue on as well, but that will also be a hybrid 4-cylinder, and that's it. Now they did say it's still going to do over 500 horsepower according to Car and Driver. So the chances here, what we're most likely looking at is the A45 engine, which almost does 400 horsepower on its own. That combined with an electric motor for an extra 100 horsepower, easy to do, put you over 500. That's most likely what will happen there. But it's the end of the V8 in the C-Class, and that's really sad. I love the C63 of this current generation I reviewed a couple of years ago. Fantastic car, and times are changing though, and 4-cylinder turbos and electrification is what you're going to get in the new C63, unfortunately. So that's that. And the last news story this week is that Dodge has been talking about electrification. I know you're like, no, not Dodge too. It might not be as dire at Dodge here. We'll have to wait and see what they do, because they haven't had any specifics here. But they've been talking about electrification, and that their new horsepower booster is going to be electrification. And that's basically, it was a couple of weeks back where they were saying that regulations are really putting the pressure on the V8s that make it harder to maybe, they would maybe keep the V8, but then you can't have a Hellcat motor with a supercharger on it. So instead you do a V8 plus hybrid or something, or maybe they'll go even more downsized than that. We'll have to wait and see. But according to Motor Trend, they were in a conference call with the new Stellantis CEO, who said, "We have the technology to deliver the torque, dynamics, and acceleration feeling while also dramatically reducing the emissions." But when you reduce the emissions, you also get rid of the sound, the character, and a few other things. I'm excited for electrification stuff. It's going to be pretty exciting in many different applications, but you're also trying to sell cars. Are people going to buy, a Challenger that has electrification for that extra power? Maybe if it still has a V8 soundtrack, but if it doesn't, it's going to be an uphill battle. So anyway, again, they didn't get any more specific, so there's no reason to, think the sky is falling just yet. But there's that, and there's a few other things that they talked about here on this conference call. But one of the other random little stories that came out this past week was that they actually did disband the SRT engineering team as well. Now, again, before you get terrified at that news, a spokeswoman reassured Mopar insiders that all of the core elements of the SRT performance engineering team have been integrated into our company's global engineering organization. So this suggests they'll continue to work on faster models throughout the company, and the SRT branding itself is sticking around. So there will still be SRT models. It's just that actual team is being broken up into other areas. So, that's interesting. I mean, I hope that means that, it's not just like, oh, the aerodynamics we learned about from the Hellcat we can now use for the Pacifica. I hope it's something that they actually do still do the performance stuff. We know Dodge loves performance. That's their DNA. They're going to have to continue to do fast performance, exciting stuff. So I'm not too concerned about it. I just really, it's kind of dicey with navigating this whole ditching the V8 thing and how that's going to play out. So, hopefully, they put that off as long as they can just for the sake of their sales. We'll have to wait and see, though. Other things, though, is on this conference call, the Stellantis CEO commented about other brands as well. So he was asked about Peugeot coming to America, since that's been something, since that's, was FCA combining with, Peugeot. That was the big thought, was we'll get Peugeots here in the States. It sounds like that's not going to happen, at least for a while, because he said it's not a priority and that they'll focus on strengthening the existing brands instead, and that they do plan to keep all their brands, though. So this means that they do plan to keep Chrysler around. There's rumors that could go by the wayside. That's not going to happen. And actually, the Stellantis CEO here says that he regards Chrysler as one of the 3 historical pillars of Stellantis, and he's excited to give this brand a future. So that sounds about as safe as you can get as far as Chrysler goes. So Chrysler dealers can relax. Sounds like they'll be around for a while. And he also suggested, the CEO here, that it could potentially be a high-tech brand that is kind of working on the next generation of automotive industry technology. So we're talking, he kind of was hinting it'll be like, mostly electric stuff and autonomous stuff in particular. So that's kind of where you should expect Chrysler to go, is, and that's fine if it's going to be some rolling, luxurious, autonomous thing. Totally fits with the Chrysler luxury branding and stuff. I think that would be just fine. So that would be kind of cool, and good to see that Chrysler will be sticking around, because it is a really historical brand. So I'm happy to see that. But yes, that's it for all the news this week, guys. Like I said, lots of stuff to cover here. Hopefully you enjoyed this extra long weekly update, though. Even if some of the news was a little bit of a bummer, it's just changing automotive industry. It's wild, but hopefully we get lots of exciting stuff still, even if it's not the same type of excitement we used to have in the past. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Please continue to stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.